kids. I'm another new guest on the Grandpa Ken David Stewart show. My name's Dougie the dog. I'm Dougie the dog, yes. I don't know where Kermit is right now. I think he's outside playing someplace. Harley the hog is somewhere. But right now, I think Grandpa Stewart is going to read a little more from the Twits to us.
Thank you, Dougie. Now, I remember last day we were reading, about how Mr. and Mrs. Twit play tricks on each other back and forth all the time. Here's another chapter called Mrs. Twit Has the Shrinks. As soon as Mrs. Twit sat down, Mr. Twit pointed at her and shouted, "There you are, you're sitting in your old chair, and you've shrunk so much your feet aren't even touching the ground." Mrs. Twit looked down at her feet, and by golly, the man was right. Her feet were not touching the ground. I'll hold the picture up and see if you can see it there. I don't know. Mr. Twit, you see, had been just as clever with a chair as he'd been with a walking stick. Every night when he'd gone downstairs and struck a little bit extra on the stick, he'd done the same to the four legs of Mrs. Twit's chair. "Just look at you sitting there in your same old chair," he cried, "and you've shrunk so much your feet are dangling in the air." Mrs. Twit went white with fear. We'll try and show you the picture there. She is very afraid. "You've got the shrinks," cried Mr. Twit, pointing his finger at her like a pistol. "You've got them badly. You've got the most terrible case of the shrinks I've ever seen." Mrs. Twit became so frightened she began to dribble. But Mr. Twit, still remembering the worms in his spaghetti, didn't feel sorry for her at all. "I suppose you know what happens to you when you get the shrinks," he said.
"What?" gasped Mrs. Twit. "What happens?"
"Your head shrinks into your neck, and your neck shrinks into your body, and your body shrinks into your legs, and your legs shrink into your feet, and in the end there's nothing left except a pair of shoes and a bundle of old clothes."
"I can't bear it!" cried Mrs. Twit.
"Oh, it's a terrible disease," said Mr. Twit. "The worst in the world."
"How long have I got?" cried Mrs. Twit. "How long before I finish up as a bundle of old clothes and a pair of shoes?"
Mr. Twit put on a very solemn face. "At the rate you're going," he said, shaking his head sadly, "I'd say not more than 10 or 11 days.
"But isn't there anything we can do?" cried Mrs. Twit.
"There's only one sure cure for the shrinks," said Mr. Twit.
"Tell me!" she cried. "Oh, tell me quickly!"
"We'll have to hurry," said Mr. Twit.
"I'm ready. I'll hurry. I'll do anything you say," cried Mrs. Twit.
"You won't last long if you don't," said Mr. Twit, giving her another of his grisly grins.
"What is it I must do?" cried Mrs. Twit, clutching her cheeks.
"You've got to be stretched," said Mr. Twit. Okay, next time we're going to read the next chapter called Mrs. Twit Gets a Stretching. Okay, kids, have a good one.